unidade, trímero, triângulo, trio, trinca, três, terno, triplo, tríplice, tripé, tribo.
Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Jason Davis, Wednesday edition of the program. Big show today. I'm a little flustered. Lots going on in the world of soccer. Recovering from last night's viewing of Hillsborough on ESPN, the first of the 30 for 30 soccer series. We're going to talk about that. But we have a special guest host today, one of the backers, supporters, friends of Soccer Morning. Scott, I did not ask you how to pronounce your last name, but I'm going to call you Scott, and you can tell me.
That works. Last name's Rowson.
Rowson. Okay, because it looks like it could be Rosen. You never know.
It could be.
Right? It sounds like you got some feedback there. Let's make sure we have some audio integrity here. Scott, you are a Kansas City guy. Let's get to know Scott a little bit before we move on the show. We're, again, talking about certainly Hillsborough today. It's also Big Atlanta Announcement Day. We're going to talk about that. We've got a couple of guests lined up. Michael Wheeler, who is a FIFA-accredited agent, has an agency here in the U.S. representing players, has written a interesting piece on the notion of youth clubs in the United States and the money that might be available to them in terms of training compensation, which is not something that's happening now. So I'm excited to talk to Michael Wheeler about that. And then our friend Tom Marshall from south of the border will talk to us about Mexican soccer. But Scott, all right, so you're a Kansas City guy. I'm assuming you're a Sporting Kansas City fan, right?
I am. I actually live about 2 hours away. But yeah, we are Sporting KC supporters and season ticket holders.
All right,
so
yeah. You live 2 hours away. Okay, I think this is a good little picture of what American soccer is in a very vast country. Where in the general, you don't have to tell me your town or anything, but do you live in Kansas? Do you live in Missouri? Where do you live?
Sure. We're on the Missouri side, actually. Okay. Columbia, Missouri, home of the University of Missouri. So it's a little bit of a hike.
All right. So you're in the you're down there where Mizzou is, and as a Sporting fan, you are willing to make that 2 hour trek up to Kansas City, Kansas for Sporting Kansas City games. Again, I think this is interesting because it shows, it kind of reflects that Sporting and teams like Sporting can sort of be regional teams and draw from a wider area than most teams around the world. You know, you get 20,000 in, it's all locals. You're a local, but in a very stretched out kind of way.
It is. I do have the slight advantage of having a sister-in-law that lives about 3 minutes from the stadium. So if we're having a couple of beers before and during the game, it's no problem. I don't have to drive 2 hours home or anything like that. So luxuries are nice. And
you're obviously still basking in the glow of an MLS Cup title last year. Sporting Kansas City so far this year. What do you make of that team?
They're still kind of finding their footing. They we were hoping for better out of the CONCACAF Champions League, obviously, but Cruz Azul is a tough team, and we were coming at them, with some new and some young players, especially on the wings of the defense, and Marco Fabian and those guys just carved us up. So
you could go ahead and out Meshach Jerome, who has been cut, by the way. The guy who got torched at Cruz Azul is no longer even a Sporting Kansas City player at this point.
Yeah, no, and he was, at one point kind of a promising addition to the team. So it's, we have other guys out there like Kevin Ellis that are hopefully going to be, up and coming guys outside. So, we'll see. But it's a sound team. They're obviously returned most of the players, so I think they'll find their footing. They're kind of languishing a little bit, but it's not, panic button time or anything like that. I think they're going to be fine.
All right, let's go back in time a little bit as we continue to get to know our co-host for today, Scott Rowson, who helps support Soccer Morning. Thank you very much, Scott, for that. Were you a Wizards guy? Were you a fan before the Sporting transition?
Not a huge fan. I went to some games. I've been to, I watched them beat Manchester United and Arrowhead, which was quite an experience. I went to a few games there and a few games in the, Community America ballpark or something. It's a minor league ballpark. It was real tough to enjoy a game there, but we went to a few of those games. Wasn't a huge fan, but, it's probably about 2010 is when I kind of started, getting a more intense interest, I guess.
It's interesting you mentioned the win over Manchester United in that friendly at Arrowhead. That's kind of pointed to in Kansas City as a seminal moment in the development of soccer in that town and changing over sort of the old Wizards culture to what was going to become Sporting Kansas City in the very near future. And you mentioned Community America Ballpark, and we're about to get another MLS team in a baseball stadium as their home. It's a little different. Yankee Stadium and Community America, a little different. But Community America Ballpark, also the site of the most amazing miss in the history of MLS, in my opinion, Kai Kamara, right there on the doorstep. It was wet, but it was bad. Were you, Scott, again, sort of taking you as a representative American soccer fan? I dig this little microcosm element of this. What's your soccer history? I mean, were you a guy that played as a kid? Did you follow the game throughout your life, or did you kind of have a stop start and come back to it?
Well, I've thought about that, and it's sort of, my experience is maybe analogous to the soccer culture in the U.S. as a whole. I grew up playing rec soccer, wasn't super serious in it. I think I played on a travel, like a select team once, like in 6th grade or something. I kind of drifted in and out of the scene, had no awareness whatsoever of the wider soccer world until, really the World Cup here in '94 kind of, ginned up some interest. And ever since then, and that's been a long time, but, my interest has kind of, grown since that time and evolved from, where I was really, really intensely interested in the World Cup every 4 years, but didn't really have anything to do with it, outside of that. And then just within the last 5 years, really kind of, exploded some interest. And of course, there's so much on TV now that I think that helps a lot. And, we went to a game, in Rome on one of our travels abroad, and I just kind of started following Roma, and that kind of led to more Premier League, interest and German, Bundesliga interest. And so it's kind of been an evolving thing. And now I'm spending lots of money on season tickets.
Yeah,
so
there you go. That's how it's a bug, and it gets in you, and you can't let go of it. And then that's why we're all here, and that's why I do a daily soccer show, and that's why you've contributed to the point that you are now a guest host on said
Absolutely.
daily soccer show. All right, so that's Scott Rowson. He's sitting in for the entirety of the show today. Again, Michael Wheeler, FIFA agent, soccer agent in the United States, will join us in about 10 minutes to talk about American youth clubs not going after what FIFA provides for them, or for youth clubs, which is, or any club as a matter of fact, in terms of training compensation, solidarity payments. These are things that are available but not taken advantage. And we'll get into the reasons why that is and whether or not that can change with Michael Wheeler. And then at 11 o'clock, our friend Tom Marshall will join us to talk about Mexican soccer. In the meantime, I have to talk a little bit about Hillsborough. I know I've been going on about this, okay? I've been going on about the documentary that debuted last night on ESPN. It was my second viewing of the documentary. We had Daniel Gordon, the director, on the show Friday. I thought it was an excellent interview. He did a lot of press. He's all over the place. I think you should go and listen to everything he had to say, not just what he said here at Soccer Morning. But it was it was an amazing documentary in my opinion, and I think it did a great job of sort of outlining everything that's happened over the last 25 years in relation to the tragedy at Hillsborough. Scott, did you watch it?
I've got it taped.
Okay, so you got it DVR'd. Okay, look, this isn't a spoiler situation. I mean, everybody knows what happened. I don't think it's going to hurt the power of the film to talk about what's revealed. And we don't have to go into it in depth. I don't want to make this show a downer. Obviously, yesterday was the 25th anniversary of the Hillsborough tragedy, and it was an interesting day for that film to debut here in the United States. And I said this to Daniel Gordon. A lot of expats I know who live here now sort of refused or were unwilling or unable or uncomfortable watching it yesterday. Completely understand that. But for those of you out there who did watch it, I'd be curious to get your take, because I think there's this thing about soccer fans, and Scott, I don't know if you've picked up on this, and I don't know how it is in Kansas City, but if you're a soccer fan and you're engaged in the community, whether it's the internet or otherwise, there's sort of this notion that, we want to trump each other with our knowledge. Oh, well, I know about this thing that happened in 1963. You don't know about it. You're not a real soccer fan. I hope that's not the attitude about this specific event and the ramifications of Hillsborough. I hope that Americans came to this honestly and were informed. I'll admit it. I knew about Hillsborough. And again, I said this to Daniel Gordon. In an academic sense, I had an appreciation of what that day was about and the 96 people who lost their lives. But this was just a punch to the gut. And the full details of what happened and what happened afterward were stunning. If you guys want to talk about this, a little catharsis here, it's to 347-756-6276 is the phone number. If not, I mean, we can move on here, Scott. I don't know how you feel about it. And for those of us with no particular connection to Liverpool or to Sheffield or to English football in general, I mean, I don't have a club. I'm not invested in English football. I think it can still hit home. Are you a fan of English football? Do you have a team?
No, I'm sort of like you. I'm kind of agnostic. I just enjoy the competition and the quality on the field. So I've tried to hold tryouts, I guess, for a couple of years, and I thought it was going to be Tottenham for a while, but we got rid of Bale and Dempsey, so I'm still auditioning, I guess. But it definitely does. It strikes a chord, and it's unbelievable that something like that could even happen, let alone the cover up and victim blaming and stuff that went on. And I think that's a big part of what the documentary is going to be on. So I'm curious and I'm excited to see it. But
yeah, you say you held tryouts. I thought that interesting because I've sort of done the same thing and nothing's grabbed me. And again, I don't think you have to have a connection to any of the entities involved in this to be hit by what it was. And there's an interesting point to all of this, that because of Hillsborough, and it's insane that it took that to get us where we are. But because of Hillsborough, you got all-seater stadiums. And once you got all-seater stadiums, there came in more money into the game. Obviously, television was a major factor in it when Sky and the clubs of the top division decided to form the Premier League in 1992. So all of these things are connected in a way. And in fact, I read a quote from Daniel Gordon in which he said, one of the people he interviewed and didn't make the film said, when you watch your Premier League on the weekend, you should be remembering those people who died at Hillsborough, because without them and without that event, we don't get this Premier League. And that is a tough thing to swallow as a Premier League fan, and I am a general Premier League fan, Scott.
Yeah, that is tough, and it's strange that we may have something like that to thank, I guess, almost for as much coverage and as much money as is in the game now. It's a very strange set of circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. It is ridiculous. And one of the other things that kind of came with the territory last night, talking about Hillsborough, and I was admonished about feeding the trolls on Twitter, and I fully take responsibility for doing that and then taking it back. I had to take it back. But there's prior to what happened at Hillsborough, Liverpool fans were involved in a very notorious incident, a tragedy at Heysel, where fans lost their lives as a result of the behavior of Liverpool fans. And rather than, I don't want to belabor this. And again, I have no dog in this fight. I am not a Liverpool fan. I am not a Liverpool hater. I am agnostic about Liverpool. But I think it's ridiculous to invoke Heysel. And if you follow Tony Evans, who was featured in the film and is a journalist at the Times, you saw some of his reaction to the notion that Heysel had anything to do with Hillsborough. That's the part that bothers me. As if the loss that the family suffered and the pain that Hillsborough caused is somehow okay because other different Liverpool fans acted like jerks at Heysel and caused a catastrophe. And there were obviously infrastructure issues at Heysel as well that played into it. And to me, this is the worst part of soccer tribalism, Scott. And I know I don't want to make it out like all Americans are angels when it comes to sports, but I don't feel like we have. I don't know. I feel like we're missing that element. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad to be that passionate that you come to the defense of your team or are always looking to hate on the other side. I mean, that obviously makes for a different sort of atmosphere. But it's not good. It's not healthy for non-Liverpool fans, Liverpool haters, United fans, whoever they are. Not United fans. I don't want to throw them into the mix. But in general, to kind of say, well, look at what happened at Heysel when Hillsborough is being discussed. It doesn't make any sense.
No, there shouldn't be any connection there. And it's.
Uh-oh. I seem to have lost Scott. I was attempting to take a phone call. 508, you're on the air.
Hi, my friend. This is Russ from Massachusetts.
Hey.
Cottage Talk. How you doing?
Yeah, our friend Russ Goldman. What's up, man?
Listen, I just wanted to call in because I found the documentary, and you and I were tweeting back and forth, extremely powerful. And someone, like you, I knew about it, but I never had a detailed documentary to really walk me through it, paint the picture for me, and it was chilling. I was actually shaking watching this, and I think, again, if you don't know the story, I would definitely recommend everyone, and I'm not just talking soccer fans, everyone watch this.
Yeah.
Because like you mentioned, the game changed after this, the fan experience changed after this in England, and but I mean, none of these people should be forgotten. The families, I actually tweeted this out. My prayers go out to the '96, the families of the '96, and everyone in Liverpool that were affected by this over the years. And I'm glad that I got a documentary that actually basically showed me everything I wanted to know about it, and really affected me.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I thought it was a powerful piece of filmmaking. Again, I know that that a lot of people bring their biases to the table, and sometimes that affects how we evaluate something like this. I don't have any biases here. I have none. My only bias is that I value human life, and I have empathy for people and sympathy for people who lose loved ones in a senseless tragedy that should not have happened. Okay, so that's part of the reason why we need to separate anything that came before Hillsborough from what happened at Hillsborough. Hillsborough was the result of actual criminal neglect on the part of public safety officials who were supposed to make sure that nothing like that happened. And obviously, it was part of a wider culture of sort of an anti-football establishment in England at the time. There's a lot of political elements to it that make it even more fascinating. And I'm sure there are excellent books on the subject out there, which I now am interested in reading. I probably was before, but now this is kind of the spur to push us on to look into that kind of stuff a little bit. And it's about knowing history. And this, just because you know about what happened at Hillsborough and you understand it and you feel for those families and you want justice for the 96 doesn't mean you can't also go back and inform yourself about what happened at Heysel, what happened in other parts of the world. I had someone on Twitter, and I apologize, I don't remember the details, mentioned to me that there was a stadium disaster in South America in which 300 people lost their lives. That's important too. Let's go find that one. Let's go get information on that one as well. I appreciate the phone call, Russ.
Not a problem.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get Scott back on the line. That's step one. And then we'll talk to Michael Wheeler, MAE Agency. He is a soccer agent in the United States, FIFA accredited. He'll talk to us about solidarity, training compensation for youth players who move on. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Oh, by the way, thanks to Luis Villanueva for the music today. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Jason Davis back on Soccer Morning. Special guest host Scott Rowson sitting in with me, but on the line with me now, Michael Wheeler. He is a soccer agent. MAE Agency is his operation in the United States. He has co-written a piece on training compensation and solidarity payments that American youth clubs are not going after. Michael, how are you, sir?
How you doing, Jason?
I'm good. You were kind enough that the piece is posted at Top Drawer Soccer. I will say that it's behind a paywall for Top Drawer Soccer subscribers. You were kind enough to send me a copy of it. And this is one of those topics I think gets lost in the mix when we talk about youth development in the United States and where American soccer is going. There are rules, there are stipulations, there are statutes for clubs who contribute to the development of a player to be paid when he moves on and signs and is transferred and fees are paid. And American clubs aren't going after those dollars. Why is that?
Correct. I think first of all, we want to write this article basically to educate the fans, the coaches, and principally the academy directors out there that there's these payments called training compensation and solidarity payments that are out there, and it's basically FIFA developed these rules to try to get the money and transfer fee back into the grassroots development of the game. And so right now we just wanted to put the issue out there, educate the public, and get everyone starting to talk about that there's this money available through FIFA. And since we have the developmental academies and more of our players are being picked off and being transferred abroad or being signed abroad, there's going to be an issue, and there's going to be a test case that goes before the FIFA and DRC, which is the Dispute Resolution Center. There'll be an issue where an academy team comes and says, listen, we trained this player between the ages of 12 and 17. He now signs his first contract with Manchester United. We should be compensated through training compensation. And that will happen because I'm hearing more and more from these soccer academy directors that they know about it, but they just don't know how to do it, and they don't know the process.
Now, there are two, you mentioned them, training compensation and the solidarity mechanism. What, if you could boil it down into simple terms as possible, what's the difference between the two?
Sure. Training compensation is basically payments that go back to the club that trained the player before he became a pro. And then solidarity payments are payments that happen every time 5% of the transfer fee goes back and gets distributed to all the clubs that trained him before he became a pro. Actually, it goes to all the clubs that trained him up until the age of 23. And it gets transferred through, various formulas that the FIFA has set forth. But basically, it's solidarity payments, 5% goes back to all the clubs from ages 12 to 23.
Now, there are, you mentioned that the club directors know about this, and American clubs haven't been chasing it. Now, there may be some reasons for that, and you sort of outline the possibility that American labor laws have an impact on this. First, what labor laws are in play, or I guess more specifically, based on what you write in the piece, what labor laws do people think are in play but might not be?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I've gotten feedback from former MLS GMs that have looked into this issue, and they reached out to their lawyers, I guess, on this issue, and they came back that there would be a conflict with labor law. As we set forth in the paper, don't really think it applies at all, any of the labor law issues for the myriad of cases that we cited in the article. Basically, for us, it was a non-issue. I just had to address it because the perception is out there that somehow labor law applies.
Now, the other part of this, which you address and which we all know is sort of a fundamental flaw with the American system, is the pay-to-play model and how that impacts how clubs go about, getting fees in order to keep going, and how that might disincline them from going after these payments.
Correct. What we try to do is set forth in the article is that we think the best system for these youth academies to try to go after training compensation solidarity payments is to set up basically a clearinghouse or a system in place where they can check off, okay, we've got this kid who's in our academy. He's going to be good. Can we get him a scholarship? Can we get him to, come through our academy where he doesn't have to pay any expenses? Because we believe we put the necessary time and training and energy into him that he's going to become a professional player. Right now, with our system, it's largely pay to play because you have to run a club, and it's expensive. Facilities, paying coaches, travel, etc. We have a pay to play model that's in place because largely we don't have a history or a system in place where we have pro clubs kind of basically compensating and developing these players on their own dime. So we need to try to get or have these academy directors focus and look in the big picture, look forward into the big picture and see we've got a couple kids who are going to be talented. Can we get them a scholarship and track them throughout their development and see, okay, if they become pro, now we can kick in place the procedures for training compensation and solidarity payments.
Now, there's NCAA eligibility addressed as well in the piece, and obviously the system that has developed in the United States and sort of following the model of other professional sports, kids tend to go to college, and that's a cultural thing as well. You get out of high school,
Right.
You go to college. How much of an impact does that element and sort of the pressure on high school kids to go to college impact whether or not clubs are going to be chasing money, which may or may not affect eligibility?
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA is there. No one wants, before you have a conversation with any kid that's going to go pro here with a kid who's in America because of our culture, you have to address amateur eligibility and protect it and whether or not, college is a viable option. Basically, we have, though, a system in place where a lot of these kids and a lot of these young kids are already going over on trials over to overseas. And so we want to address it just to make sure that so long as the cost of travel, per diem expenses are paid and nothing is going back to compensate the player, then they're fine. So then the youth academy director that has already developed the player, he's talented enough, and he's got relationships overseas. Okay, well, have the kid, go over there and train. Make sure that no one gets paid for sending them over there and getting them a scouting trip. And then if something comes through, then there could be developing a relationship in the future with that foreign club that this academy director is known over in the U.S. for developing and training these kids at a high competent level. There could be some affiliations and some relationships that develop in the future for that U.S. club to then send back to that foreign club. We have these affiliations that are in place, but, largely they're just like training camps and nothing really meaningful happens. And by this article, we're trying to get club directors and coaches to think progressively of how they can get money back into their program so then they can get the money and develop more of the Josie Altidores, the Rossies, the Dempseys.
What role does U.S. Soccer have in the whole process and whether or not clubs can or will go after these payments?
Listen, it's largely been an issue that has not been addressed, and there's been no clear precedent given by the federation. I don't think I'm ruffling too many feathers by saying that. There's never been a case that's been brought before FIFA from a U.S. club asking for training compensation or solidarity payments. And in the rest of the world, I guarantee you, every time that, Colo Colo from Chile or Boca Juniors, from Argentina, they have a kid that all of a sudden they see is playing for Benfica, they're going to knock on the door and send a letter to Benfica and ask them, hey, where was our training compensation or solidarity payments? And if nothing happens, then they're going to file a claim to FIFA. The fact that that's never happened in the history here in any U.S. soccer club is astounding, especially with all the talent that's going abroad now.
Yeah, and that's a point of this as well, and certainly addressed in the piece in the paper you wrote that specifically the dynamic that bothers American fans is when Mexican clubs come into the United States and poach Mexican American players, and there is no compensation paid to those clubs who help those players get to the point where they're attractive to a Mexican club.
Correct. And there's, I would say to any foreign scout, Manchester City, just come to the training grounds of Red Bulls, and if you want any of those talented players, and Red Bulls Academy is considered, one of the best in the nation. Just sit there, watch them, wear your, Man City training top. Afterwards, go say hello to the kid and, introduce yourself to a parent. I guarantee you can pick off any one of them. There wouldn't be any stink that's being raised from Red Bulls, because they can't really do anything because there's no clear directive that's been given by the federation to the MLS Academy clubs. I was watching the Cholos LA Galaxy CONCACAF Champions game, and on air the commentators were great. Luis Omar Tapia, he was basically setting the obstacles and telling everyone that basically MLS academies are restricted. They have one hand tied behind their back, and meanwhile the Cholos Academy has 30% of their youth academy players taken from the Southern California area.
That's an element of this, I guess. Maybe are we going to have to see a youth club do this and try it to be the test case, or is there no why wouldn't an MLS club like the Galaxy go after solidarity payments for Paul Arriola, for example?
I'm astounded that they haven't. And I could only surmise that there's some other arrangement, or there's some type of agreement at the top not to pursue this, or this is a sticky issue. Now, I've heard maybe there's references to the Frazier versus MLS lawsuit, and that maybe if you open up these rules about FIFA payments and solidarity and training comp, then you have to open up the whole door on FIFA rules and how they apply, and on top of that with offering players full year guaranteed, just like the rest of the world does. Releasing the player if they're not played for competitive reasons, and so it could open up a Pandora's box for the MLS.
It's interesting that it might come back to that. I hadn't even considered that, but I suppose any sign that MLS clubs are acting as independent operations outside of the single entity could be a crack to be exploited. That's a terrible situation, Michael. That's bad for American soccer in the long run.
I have way too much time on my hands to think out of the box of why they haven't pursued this issue or given some clear directive, not only to the youth academies out there that are outside of the MLS system, but their own MLS clubs that are basically losing out, especially LA Galaxy and these other teams, to the Mexican clubs who are really just walking over and offering the kids pro contracts and the LA Galaxy can't do anything about it.
It makes American soccer look naive and obviously easily exploited, especially by those Mexican clubs that have relationships within this country. And again, it's terrible from a development standpoint. I guess my question then is, practically speaking, when are we going to see someone take this issue up, and how likely is that in the near future? And can we advocate for some club to do it right here?
Yeah, I've reached out to a couple clubs already. There's been some talk also from some other clubs that have reached out to me as well. I know I had another colleague that had taken a case up to FIFA. At the very last minute, there was some type of settlement that happened, and we weren't able to see a clear precedent. That case would have been the first one that actually established or gave some precedent on what could happen if a U.S. club did pursue it within the FIFA system. So, I think it's going to come to a head. There's more people talking about it. The fact that this paper is going to be out there. It's going to be published by the NSCA Journal, so maybe some of these other academy directors across the country read it. And it's going to happen just because there's way too much information. The soccer public is becoming way too smart and intelligent about this issue, and they're really pushing it to a head. So, I've reached out to a couple of academy directors within my own area. They're already looking at kind of their Rolodex of past players who've gone on to play pro. Unfortunately, some of them were on a pay-to-play model, so it's not a good test case. If there's a scholarship player that's out there that some team has not, sought redress in the FIFA courts, and they should pursue it, and I'm more than open to talk with them. Now, what happens really is the problem is there is a statute of limitations, and it's 18 months. So if a club doesn't pursue it within those 18 months, then they can forget about being able to be compensated through those procedures.
At the very least, it feels like it. And look, this is sort of an arcane issue that is not going to be of interest to the general public, the people who just want to watch some soccer. But if you are at all interested in the future of U.S. soccer development, then maybe we should be advocating at least for U.S. soccer to explain why this has not been something that has been taken advantage of. And again, if there's a law in place, if there's a rule, the fact that it hasn't been addressed makes it feel like there's some backroom deals being made, Michael.
Listen, if there's if I've misinterpreted or I haven't highlighted or demonstrated all the rules that are affecting us. Principally, what happens in these cases where there's conflict between FIFA and some type of soccer rule, the home jurisdiction of the country always rules over anything to FIFA. So they'll likely say that there's a rule out there that we have to be governed by that overrules the FIFA system. That's what they'll say. But yet, when a kid gets transferred out of the U.S. to England, then FIFA kicks in, and you can't say that the U.S. laws govern that, because now we're talking about the FIFA system, and now if we have a club over in England that is, basically ransacking academy players from another country, well, training compensation is there to prevent that, because we want to make sure that the coaches get compensated. And this whole issue is basically for the good of U.S. soccer. It's about just getting money back into the grassroots of the game. If we get more money in the grassroots of the game, then coaches have better facilities, better training methods, better tools available at their disposal to basically coach kids in a better and more effective way. And hopefully we get more creative players. We get more technical players. We get better players, because there will be a diversity of tactics and coaching methods that are out there. And it's not just one system. MLS Academy system is great, and it kind of herds all the best players in one area and allows them to see. But yet, there's great coaches who aren't in that MLS Academy system, and maybe there's another type of method that's good for this type of player over in Southwest Texas, or this player over in New Jersey, or in the West Coast. So I think it's this issue. It's important just to talk about trying to get money to the grassroots of the game. And there's other countries such as Brazil, Italy that do that through either competitions. One of my proposals was, you've got some who basically does the marketing rights for the Mexican national team here in the U.S. Well, here we have Mexican teams who are picking off U.S. players. Okay, well, if that's happening, we can't do anything about it. At the very least, for all those Mexican games and the TV rights and the tickets that are coming through the gates, well, what you could do to justify and rectify the situation is to have a percentage of that money going back to U.S. clubs in general.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And this is, again, it sort of hits at the heart of the pay-to-play model that America has developed, in which it stunts the growth of so many kids who can't afford to get to the top-level coaches. You get money in the game through these payments. Hopefully you get more kids in that don't have to pay $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 a year just to go play for a club.
Correct.
Yeah, it is. Just to put some dollars on this issue, Michael's paper actually tallies up the totals for a couple of guys. Clint Dempsey, Giuseppe Rossi, who did develop here for a while before going into Italy, and Josie Altidore. The amount of potential money available to teams who had a role in Clint Dempsey's development is $900,000. That is not a small amount of money, Michael. That's a lot of money.
Listen, that pays for 2 U18 academy teams in MLS for 2 years.
It's a very fascinating topic. Hopefully, and as you said, this piece will be published in the NSCAA journal. I imagine a lot of people get access to it that way, and we should be talking about this issue. Michael Wheeler, go follow him on Twitter. I'm sure he'll be talking about this over there as well. MAE Agency on Twitter. Thanks for your time, Michael. I appreciate it, sir.
Thanks a lot for having me, Jason. Look forward to speaking to you again.
There he goes. Michael Wheeler, a soccer agent in the United States, with a fascinating piece on the grassroots element, how it is it's not being funded the way it could be funded. And again, is there a rule involved? Is there some law in play that people are just kind of they're believing it to be an issue where they can't get this money? I don't understand, Scott. This is weird.
Well, I think weird is the right word, though. This is, and I remember, I think you've had Michael on at least once before, and I caught that episode. I had never heard of this, and it's a very strange concept, but you can you can understand where this would come into play, but it's a very foreign kind of concept to American sports. And so I was wondering if there were, analogies really in other sports in the U.S., but I can't come up with any.
Well, I mean, the issue there is that the other American sports are completely insular, Scott. I mean, we don't have an example where a kid is going to go, play baseball until he's 18 and get signed and go play in Japan. It just doesn't happen that way. And so we don't worry about whether or not the people that involve, and it's not, again, it's a structural thing as well. Those other sports, Scott, how do you develop your game? You play scholastic sports. You play pee-wee, Little League baseball, pee-wee football, whatever that is, which is, rec, and nobody really puts that much, unless you're from Texas, puts that much into it. And then you move on to high school and you play high school sports, and that's where you develop your game. Yeah, there's AAU basketball and everything. That's all shady, but for the most part, we see this as tied to your school. And then you graduate and you go to college, and then you develop some more, and then you go into the pros. And even in baseball, where kids are signed at 18, they make their names playing for high school teams, not club teams. So maybe that's the disconnect there.
Well, when we have, Japanese or Korean players come and join, Major League Baseball, I wonder if there's any expectation on the part of the Nagoya Dragons, I think, when they transfer a player over here, do they get some sort of compensation out?
Well, that's a direct sale. I mean, that's a direct. That's when we see this the system in baseball that ends up with Japanese pitchers coming over. Most of it is it's like it's almost like a transfer system in soccer, but the bids are secret. I don't know. It's a weird posting system. It's strange, but that's a direct sale.
Well, I wonder why why we can't treat this as a straight sale as well. I mean, I wonder if that's what the thinking is. Why they don't go this route is that this is a straight sale of a player, and you're compensated in that fashion rather than retroactively.
Yeah, but we're not talking about when Josie Altro goes from Red Bulls to Villarreal. We're not talking about the money that Villarreal is paying to the Red Bulls. We're talking about that's not at issue. What's at issue is whether or not Boca Juniors, the club in Florida that he started with, and then the maybe even the academy in Bradenton should be getting compensation for their part in developing him. And look, regardless of whether or not you think it's right or wrong that those youth clubs should be getting money out of the deal, this is the way FIFA set it up. And it does. It's sort of this, it's solidarity. It is. It's a notion of putting money back into the lowest level of the game so that those teams, those clubs can hire better coaches, get better facilities, bring in more kids without having to make them pay for everything. I mean, again, we sort of, we talk about pay to play a lot. We do. And rightly so. I don't know that anybody's really cracked the code on how we get out of it. Yeah, MLS Academy should be free. There shouldn't be any payment for those guys, but that's, we're going to end up with 24 clubs in the recent future. I mean, in the near future. That's only a small portion of the American soccer players that need top level coaching. And then you have the development academy. Well, that's great, but most of those clubs are still working on a pay to play model, even if they have some scholarships to give out. There's just not enough money to bring it. I mean, there's not enough money to run the team. You're going to be running at a massive deficit if you let all the kids play for free. And that's because we don't have the clubs dotted all over the country. It seems like this is almost crucial to getting out of the pay to play model as much as possible. It may never go away completely, Scott, but we could at least put a dent into it.
Well, and it's definitely something. The funding is definitely something to that's going to be critical to the development of these academies. And I think we've got a young kid, maybe 8th grade or so, maybe a freshman, high school type age, who's on the Sporting KC Academy. And so that's, you think about that. I mean, that's 2 hours away for practices and games and these kinds of trainings. And his parents run like a local pizza parlor. I mean, that is a serious investment on a part of a very promising young talent financially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the story again. Clint Dempsey is a focus of the piece by Wheeler, and it's it's interesting. He's an interesting test case or case study is the word I'm looking for. This phrase I'm looking for, because Clint did not grow up of means, and it was a sacrifice, a significant sacrifice for his parents to have to had to commute back and forth to Dallas from Natchitoches. I mean, there was some significant, and it shouldn't be that way, is what I'm saying. I mean, even if Clint Dempsey needs to go to Dallas to get better instruction so he can be a better player, they shouldn't have to be paying into it. I don't remember if he got a scholarship or not, but even the notion that scholarships are the way for good players to get good instruction is kind of wrong-headed. And there's always a chance that a kid who's not good enough to earn a scholarship at 9 or 10 or 12 may end up becoming the best professional we've ever produced. You never know. But if he doesn't have access, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. It is. Absolutely.
All right, let's transition here with a great discussion with Michael Wheeler. Again, go follow him on Twitter at MAE Agency. I'm sure he'll be tweeting out some of the facts of this stuff, or at least the discussion behind it, and hopefully more people will have access to the article. If you're a Top Drawer Soccer subscriber, you have access now. It'll be in the NSCAA Journal coming up shortly. Let's transition to Atlanta. Today is Atlanta's big day. Atlanta, MLS, everybody's excited. Well, not everybody's excited. Scott, are you excited? Do you think Atlanta's a bad move for MLS?
I don't see why it has to be. It's one of those things that, if it handled the right way and launched the right way and branded the right way, there's no reason Atlanta couldn't be as successful as, say, putting a soccer team in the middle of nowhere on the Kansas side of the border, with Missouri, and having that take off the way it has. I mean, there's no inherent, not like maybe St. Louis, which has this, century-long, connection with the sport. Kansas City, this is all organically grown, and it kind of languished from '96.
Wait, hold on, Seth. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You describe it as organic. Maybe this is just maybe this is just a bad choice of words. You're saying that Kansas City's success right now and the popularity of Sporting Kansas City is organic? Is that what you're saying? I'm not coming at you.
It was a hotbed. I mean, you had a core group of people that were committed to the Wizards.
Okay.
And it was never going to get beyond that. I think they reached who they were going to reach with that, and they have, sold it. So organically, then these are 5 local businessmen that purchased the team and transitioned it into something that now draws a much wider spectrum. And the core group's still there. They haven't ticked those guys off. Right. But now this makes you've broadened the base of the fandom, and that has. I mean, there are plenty of organic elements to that. Whether it's let's get all of our players on Twitter and they're interacting with.
Okay, but that's sort of, to me, that's the opposite. And I'm not using this as a criticism. I'm not making a judgment of Sporting Kansas City's success not being organic is a bad thing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it was all calculated. The change over to Sporting. You obviously built a brand new stadium. In a place, I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff around that stadium, but it's still in a place that's not necessarily connected directly to downtown Kansas City or anything like that. So it's sort of the opposite, or it's a credit to everybody involved, Illig and Heineman and everybody at the top there at Sporting Kansas City. But it is not organic, and I think that means that for everybody who doubts Atlanta or doubts Miami or has questions about any city that may or may not present as an obvious soccer market, Kansas City is the argument. Kansas City is, well, look what happened there. If you do it right, if you're smart about it, the stadium matters, but if you're smart about it, you engage people. That's the element, I think, that when you say organic, that's what you mean, the engagement with the community and the fans, making the team feel like it belonged to them, rather than this sort of, here's this product that we're sticking out there, and look, it's dollar pretzel night, and bring your kids out for $10 and you'll get a bobblehead. I mean, that's not top level professional passion inducing soccer. What you've got with Sporting now is passion inducing soccer, because the club feels like it's integrated with everything else that's going on around there. Even if you had to build this edifice, even if you had to change the colors, even if you had to put a new name on the team. And again, that's why I'm open to the idea that Atlanta can be a success. Yeah, it's an NFL stadium and it's turf, and they're going to have that drape thing, which, by the way, I read in a story about Minnesota and the Minnesota Vikings stepping up their talks with MLS, that mechanism is called the house reduction mechanism. The whole drape thing that we got at BC Place and that we're going to get in Atlanta. I don't know. I thought that was fascinating. Look, I'll open up the phone lines here for anybody from Atlanta, 347-756-6276 if you want to get in. And give me your take. And I know there's some enthusiasm, and I'm excited to see the excitement in Atlanta. Excited to see the excitement. Yes, exactly. And I think that there's a possibility of success here. I also am aware that overexpansion can be disastrous. I just don't know that MLS is in a place where we should be legitimately wondering if any of these teams are going to fail. I just don't see that as a possibility. Scott, am I naive?
I don't think you're naive. I think there's a very real chance that if it, setting aside the organic concept, there's a very real chance that the leadership team, that comes in doesn't get everything right, and launches and gets off on the wrong foot, and damages their standing with the local potential fans. But I think Arthur Blank is a smart enough guy that they're going to be able to do this right. Mm-hmm. There is a very intense youth soccer, high-level youth soccer community within it. I think it could work.
Okay,
I'm looking forward to it.
The tropes that get invoked and annoy people are the youth soccer element. Anytime somebody cites the youth soccer community as some indication, and I'm not calling you out, Scott, because I did it when we talked about Atlanta the first time. That youth soccer and then the Hispanic community are sort of these fallback. They're the go-tos when it comes to, well, can this be a success? Well, they've got youth soccer and Hispanics. That makes it possible. No, it's obviously much more involved in that. We can consider many factors about Atlanta. Those are factors. I just don't think they're overriding factors. 770, you're on the air.
Yeah, Jason, this is Chris. I definitely think this is an exciting time, and I think we do have a lot of things going for us. I'm from Atlanta myself. Today is a big day, so I understand the concerns. The Revs. I don't think we're going to be the Revs, but I also don't think we're going to be the Sounders. But I'm interested to hear what you think and what are these criticisms? Because I think we have good answers for all of them.
You wonder, because it's the thing that turns a lot of people off is that this smacks of corporate thinking. This smacks of, let's grow our business. Let's synergize our all of that corporate speak that turns people off. This smacks of that because Atlanta is the hub of the Southeast, because Atlanta is a big TV market in a place where MLS didn't have one, because it is an NFL owner with an NFL stadium playing on artificial surfaces. I mean, all of that seems like MLS is just throwing out all of the stuff that has helped make the league a success, and I can see that. That shouldn't mitigate any excitement in Atlanta. And again, I implore the people of Atlanta to prove that this is a soccer town and that they can make the team open up the whole stadium. That would be the biggest FU to everybody, wouldn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I think you make good points about this is obviously there's a corporate, there's a big business aspect to this, but I would argue that probably exists for all teams in MLS as they're getting started. And I would say, opening up the stadium, I think that would be a goal at some point. I think there would be big time friendlies. Obviously, you could see with the success of some of the international friendlies, Mexico, Nigeria. And hopefully we can get the U.S. in here as well. Mm-hmm. I think that would be something down the line. Hopefully they will open up the stadium. But I don't think it's realistic necessarily.
No. I mean, look, I don't think it's going to happen. If I was going to bet on it, I would say no. They're going to get, they're going to get 18, 20 if they're having a really good run. If people are really engaged, 18 to 20 is a target that they should be shooting for. I think 25 might be the capacity with that lower bowl. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me, but I'm pretty sure it's 25. They can get to 25. That puts them in the top 2 or 3 in MLS in terms of attendance. That'd be amazing. I don't think they're going to average that, but that would be amazing. The element of opening up the whole stadium, again, that's sort of like the pie in the sky. Again, it would be an amazing FU to everybody who's doubting Atlanta. It would still not, for some people, it still wouldn't matter. It's still turf. It's still an NFL stadium. But I think there's a possibility of success here. And it's hard for me to be negative about any fans getting an opportunity to have top-level soccer in their town. And it's clear from what I've seen, and I haven't done any polling, but it's clear that there is a core base of soccer fans in Atlanta who are inordinately excited about this, Chris.
Yeah, one about your comment about the 25,000. I think that's spot on. I think what I've heard as well is 25,000. And I'd like to see. I know there's been some mock-ups of what the design looks like, but I think we have to wait on passing judgment. Really on this whole house reduction system or whatever their fancy term they're throwing out there that you mentioned earlier. We'll have to really see what that looks like on TV in real life before I'm really comfortable on making final judgment on that one. Yeah. And to your point about the kind of the grassroots movement and kind of the organic structure that we have going on, I would say that Terminus Legion, which I joined actually about a week ago, I think they're approaching almost 500 members, and that's before we even have a team, obviously, and they've been 200 plus strong, I think, even before the announcement was made. So I think we're there, and I think people are going to be surprised if they tune in tonight at 5, the live stream, that they're really going to have a lot of support out there.
Yep, the announcement is tonight. There is a live stream. I understand that there is a public gathering after the invite-only announcement. If I have that correct, this is a public space because the invite says a corner, and I put on Twitter that they're doing the announcement on a corner. I guess it's sort of a dual event, and obviously you can't put everybody into one space. Orlando managed to do it. I don't know. I guess they had a bunch of people outside. So look, go ahead.
I think it's Jason. It's 3 to 9, and I think the 3 to 5 portion, I imagine, is at the corner of kind of like you said, the corner of Baker May. I think they'll probably have different corporate sponsors, the kind of thing you see before MLS Cups out there. And then at 5 o'clock, I think they'll use that event space. I think the name of the place is Ventanas. We're supposed to hold like 1,000 something people. Hopefully they'll get everyone in there for the announcement. And then, like you said, I think it's unclear what the after party is, but maybe it's that same venue. So.
Yep. Look, I mean, there's a strong current. Thanks for the call, Chris. There's a strong current of people who very much doubt that this is the right move for MLS. I'm willing to be open to the possibility it's not. But again, they have to prove it. I'm not going to assume to know that soccer in Atlanta, that MLS soccer in Atlanta is going to be a failure on any level. What exactly constitutes a failure, I think, is an open question. But we will continue to talk about this. It's a big day for Atlanta. Let's celebrate for those fans today and leave those questions because the team is coming. It's a done deal. Arthur Blank's got cash. If he steps up and puts his money where his mouth is, then this could be an interesting situation in Atlanta. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to grab Tom Marshall, Mexico World Cup. We'll talk to him about situation in Mexico. CONCACAF Champions League final first leg last night. Ended scoreless, so there's that. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. soccermorning.com. Go support the show. Thanks a lot. Be right back.
Eu já não sei o que fazer. Duro pé rapado com salário atrasado. Eu não tenho mais.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back to the old music there. I think I got one more song from Luis Villanueva, who picked our music today. I'll get to it, I promise, Luis. It's been a crazy morning. Jason Davis here with Scott Rowson, sitting in, helping me out. You can go support the show at soccermorning.com, just like Scott did to get his seat. Tom Marshall joins us, Mexico World Cup on Twitter, newly minted television star on TV, covering USA-Mexico from Glendale, Arizona. I'll get to the happenings in Mexico and some of the Mexicans abroad and the Champions League and the Libertadores and everything else in a second, Tom. But tell me about that experience, because it was very cool to see a guy I talk to all the time, talking about the Mexican team on TV.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's something very different for me as well, but it's enjoyable. I mean, it's a lot of pressure. It's no obviously, I mean, it's goes without saying, but when you're writing, you can obviously go back and edit, change bits, shift things around. Whereas on the TV, when it's live, and you got Alexi Lalas and Casey Keller next to you as well.
Yeah,
it's like you got to be on it, and it's good though. I liked it. It was I like the pressure.
Yeah. Okay. So butterflies were containable then.
Yeah. I mean, okay. There were definitely nerves, but I mean. Yeah, just get on with it, and you got to enjoy it at the end of the day. I mean, you don't know how often these things come up, do you? So you got to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on my invite from ESPN. No, it's not going to happen, but it's okay. That's right. Sam is here. Let's talk some Mexican soccer. Let me start with the CONCACAF Champions League final. Cruz Azul Tijuana is a 0-0 draw last night, and I didn't watch the game, Tom. I'll admit to that, and that's a failure on my part, because if this tournament's going to matter in this part of the world, then the final has to be a big deal, even in the United States, even for non-Mexican soccer fans. But what did you make of that game and sort of the end result for two teams that have some firepower?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think this competition needs an MLS Liga MX final. I mean, to really get both sides of the border, even down here as well, to really get it hyped up more. So yeah, I think in terms of the game last night, obviously you got the two teams, number 1 and number 2 in the Liga MX, two really, really good teams playing really well. Basically, I thought they cancelled each other out. I mean, both play a 4-2-3-1 with like two holding midfielders. So I thought it was a good game. I mean, unless you know the teams and it was a tactical battle, put it that way. I mean, it was a real tactical battle and real grind in midfield, but I quite enjoyed that. I mean, although I think most people wouldn't have done.
One of a couple of the names that people were watching in this tie, and obviously with an eye towards the World Cup this summer, Isaac Brazuelia, I can't say his name, I apologize, and Marco Fabian. And I saw some tweets. Again, I admit to not watching the game, but I saw some tweets about maybe a little heat between those two players who could be teammates come this summer.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's like at the minute with the obviously the World Cup creeping up. I mean, Miguel Ponce for Toluca was up against Marco Fabian, ex-teammates for Chivas, and yeah, they were really going at it. Brizuela, on the right wing for Toluca. I don't know. I feel in the last few weeks. I mean, this is a guy who in like say February, early March was like the new sensation for Mexico. I mean, he'd just been steadily increasing, but I feel like over the last few weeks his forms have dipped a little bit, and I think he's got to step it up now. I mean, if he wants to be in the squad and be pushing for a starting spot for Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, the pressure is getting to me talking to you. I said Tijuana, I meant Toluca. I apologize for everybody who's yelling at their internet radio machines right now. It is Toluca and Cruz Azul in the final here. So what does this set us up for in the second leg? Who holds the advantage here? I mean, a scoreless draw would seem to benefit the away team, but that might not be the case.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's much in it. I think it's going to be the same kind of grinding game, where both managers aren't going to want to give much away, and the same kind of game. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'd slightly give the advantage to Cruz Azul just because I don't see much difference between the two teams, mm-hmm. and I feel that Cruz Azul will score. So then, Toluca, the onus is on them to score twice, and I don't know. It's it's a difficult one with the away goals rule. So, but I think I'm going for Toluca to just scrape it to get a victory.
Now, the Mexican teams in the Champions League, this is the final, but Mexican teams also in the Copa Libertadores, which we know is a big deal, the biggest tournament, certainly in the Americas. Mexican fortunes in this tournament at this point, where's the trend going, Tom?
No, it's really, I mean, every now and then there's a lot of excitement about Mexican teams in the Libertadores, but I think this year especially really excited about Leon and Santos Laguna. I mean, Leon last week against Flamengo, obviously one of the Brazilian giants in the Maracanã, full stadium down in Rio, and get the 3-2 victory, and just didn't hold out, stayed true to the attacking style, and got the a 3-2. So it's a great result to get him through. They've got Bolivar from Bolivia now at home today, so. I think they need to take a 2-goal lead because Bolivia, where they play, is I think it's La Paz. Is that the altitude is just ridiculous, and it does take a lot out of the teams there. So yeah, and Santos Laguna down at Llanos in Argentina, tough game, but I think the only negative thing about the Mexican teams this year, if they both go through, they meet each other in the quarterfinal stage. So maximum only one in the semi-final, and yeah, it's going to be, obviously when you get to that stage, it's very, very difficult. But yeah, great competition. I'm really enjoying this season.
The Copa Libre in the round of 16 at this point. And you talk about the meeting and only one of them being able to get through to the semi. If they advance past this point, that's, how does sort of, and I don't know that there's this all for one mentality in Mexico that there might be if an American team was either in the Copa Libre or made it all the way to the final of the Champions League. But is there that kind of a disappointing situation for Mexicans? I mean, we've seen Mexican teams do well and make finals in the Copa Libre. That's happened before. But is this because both these teams are good and good representations of Mexican soccer, a disappointing element for Mexican fans?
I think there's a similarity with. I mean, I think US fans see Mexican teams in the CONCACAF Champions League sometimes put out second teams and stuff like that, and it's disappointing. I think it's generally disappointing when they do that. But these two teams, Leon and Santos Laguna, in the Copa Libertadores, have done the opposite. They put out weakened teams in the league and absolutely gone for the Libertadores. So, I think it's got a lot to do with that. I think both managers, Leon's Gustavo Matosas and Santos Laguna's Pedro Caixinha, I think they both got an outward mentality. I think they both want to manage in Europe one day. And I think that's why they've taken the Libertadores so seriously. They know that's the window to attracting attention from Europe.
Now, Tom, there's the element of the MLS dynamic with Mexico in the Champions League is one of the major talking points is certainly spending. Mexican teams much richer, spend much more on players, therefore have more quality, more depth, and dominate the competition as you would expect. What's the comparison? And maybe you're not an expert on necessarily how much Brazilian teams or Argentinian teams or Bolivian teams are spending, but are Mexican teams spending more on average or about the same? How does that dynamic work? Because obviously Mexico very successful in this, or relatively successful in this tournament.
Yeah, I'd say I think Brazilian teams have got similar spending power to Mexico. I'd say that Mexican teams can outspend Argentine teams at this point. And then you look at the likes of Colombia and Ecuador, and you look at the amount of players from those countries in not just Mexico but also MLS, and obviously they don't pay very good wages down there. So I mean, look at the Ecuadorian national team. You've got 5-6 players playing in Mexico and doing really well, and so obviously they're attracted to Mexico. So yeah, I'd say Brazil similar, and then after that I'd say Mexico in terms of the continent.
We're headed towards the World Cup, and obviously a lot of the talk is going to be about national team players wherever these teams are that are qualified, and Mexico has that dynamic working, Tom. We talk about it every time between whether or not Miguel Herrera is going to integrate the foreign element, the Mexicans abroad element of the team as well as he can, and I know there are a couple of questions as to injuries. First of all, is Guardado, he's done for the season? Is that correct?
Nobody's come out and officially said it. I mean, it's not been.
I saw Andres Cantor say that Guardado said so on his Facebook page, which is the modern world, which is amazing.
No, yeah, I've not seen it. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's negative for Guardado. I mean, just missing out. I mean, he needs to be playing. It's a strong possibility he's not going to make the squad anyway.
Right.
So, you know, even if he misses the next few weeks and he's fit for the World Cup, then he probably doesn't make it. I mean, this is Herrera's way, I think, you know. This is the deal Mexico did, really, when they changed from, you know, Tena, Pulisic, Chepo to Herrera. I mean, this was the deal. It was always going to be a really short process. There was never going to be time to integrate players. There was always going to be just one FIFA date before the squad was announced. So, you know, all those players in Europe, you know, their places are at risk. And I think Guardado is one of them who's, you know, didn't play well at all in the qualifiers and really needed to prove himself with his club form. And I thought it was a gamble going to Germany. You know, I was happy that he did it because I like that kind of thing from a player and, you know, expanding your horizons and all that. But, you know, this injury comes at the worst possible time for Guardado.
The fortunes of Javier Hernandez at Manchester United are an ongoing saga. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Is he going to score goals? He's not going to score goals. And I know I'm assuming he'll be in the World Cup team. I imagine that would be a shock if he's not. And there are going to be questions, I imagine, about his form, not as much as there are about Josie Altidore for us, but some questions. What's his future, though? I mean, is this summer finally the time when he cuts bait on Manchester United and makes a move elsewhere?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's not been any official word, but you look at, you know, like talking about the social networks, you look at Chicharito's like Instagram and like the subtle hints that he gives and like one day the truth will come out and stuff like this, you know, really vague statements. And you have to think something's going on behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, he's 25 now. And, you know, he's going to he'll turn 26 before the World Cup. So he's in his prime. He needs to be playing. I mean, this is a player who's, you know, potentially going to be on the, you know, if you look at the Mexican all-time players, he can potentially be up there in number 3, you know, if his career goes well from now on. So he needs to be playing. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And he shouldn't be settling for being on the bench. And, you know, at United, David Moyes just doesn't seem to fancy him, you know. Even when, you know, you look at that Bayern Munich game when he kept Rooney on for so long, you know what I mean, and missed chances and he just didn't seem to trust Hernandez just after he'd played absolutely brilliantly against Newcastle. So, yeah, I mean, I think the writing seems to be on the wall for Chicharito, and, you know, it's a big decision now, you know, which club he moves to, but I'm sure there won't be any shortage of offers.
Expect him to stay on the to go to the continent, though, rather than maybe make a return to Mexico?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think still top teams will be after him, you know. Probably, you know, obviously outside that small elite of, you know, Bayern, Barca, Real Madrid, you know, Chelsea, City. Outside of that, I expect like big teams, you know, Atletico Madrid. If Diego Costa goes elsewhere, then that, you know, that'd be absolutely perfect for someone like him. Yeah, but it's exciting to see where he goes, actually.
Also, rumors swirling around Memo Ochoa, who's obviously playing in France. Is he destined for a move? What's the interest like in his services?
He's 100% moving. His contract ends with Ajaccio in June, and he's stated he was on French TV the other day. It was actually pretty impressive, speaking a bit of French.
Wow.
You know, I don't speak French, but it sounded pretty impressive.
Okay.
So yeah, I think AC Milan are reported to be interested. But he preferred to stay in France. He wants to stay in France. I think he's still got time before he can become a citizen, and he really wants to get the EU citizenship so that he doesn't take up a foreigner spot.
Right.
I think the best place for him there looks to be on paper Marseille. The potential for Marcelo Bielsa coming in, see a Spanish speaker, a team with that, you know, have got plans in place to kind of at least try and challenge Monaco and PSG over there. So, and they've got a keeper who's likely to be moving on. So yeah, I'd say right now Ochoa, the number one, the most probable destination is Marseille.
Where does he fit in the Mexican goalkeeping setup? I mean, it's odd to think of a player playing in Europe, playing well in Europe, and you mentioned this with Guardado potentially not being the first choice for Mexico.
Yeah, no, he's Yeah, I mean, if he goes to the World Cup and he's on the bench, this will be his third straight World Cup on the bench. I mean, it's got to hurt really.
Hard
level, especially with his profile in Mexico. I mean, there's few players with bigger profile than Ochoa. Yeah, nobody really knows. I'm not going to lie to you, Jason. Nobody
knows.
Goalkeeping situation. I mean, if I was to hazard a guess, I'd say Corona's just about in front at the minute. But Herrera keeps saying that he's got 4 keepers. He needs to cut it down to 3. And yeah, I mean, there's still potential that Ochoa doesn't go. I mean, it's up in the air at the minute, Ochoa. But at the same time, it wasn't surprising me if he doesn't go. It wouldn't surprise me if he's the number 1. So, it's difficult.
I think that sums up L3 in one statement right there. It wouldn't surprise you if he goes. You wouldn't be surprised if he misses out completely. That's pretty much. Can't really guess, can you?
No, yeah, I mean, yeah. Like I said, that was the deal they did. They'd not got time to integrate, and I think the result of that, like making a bold prediction, I don't think the Mexico team that starts this first game against Cameroon will be that different than the one that faced New Zealand. In terms of mainly American players, a few Leon players mixed in there. I mean, I just, obviously there'll be a few players, slid in there, but yeah, I really don't think that the European players and the ones that came in against the US that first half did enough to, to get rid of the American Leon players that did the job against New Zealand.
I will question it. I mean, I will defer to the experts clearly, but I will question that. But I also respect Herrera for sticking to his guns if he ends up going with that route.
Yeah, no, I mean it's just like a tank or something. There's no reverse gear, just drilling through everything, and this is what it's going to be like, and this is how I'm going to do it. And if you don't like it, then it's tough. I'm going to keep going, and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to make the final, and blah blah blah. And it's just a non-stop drive forward for the Mexico team, and yeah, it's going to be exciting though. I think Mexico in the World Cup is going to be very exciting, and Herrera's personality is going to, I think he's going to be a bit of a cult star around the world. Oh, absolutely. He is so jiffable, if you know. I can't believe I'm saying that word, Tom. But that the images that Miguel Herrera provides us from the sideline are some of the most amazing ones in the world. That includes Jurgen Klopp looking like he wants to bite the 4th official's head off. Tom Marshall, Mexico World Cup. Go follow him for all of your Mexican soccer information. He is now a television star, which means get in now before he completely blows up and has 1 million followers, and you'll never be able to converse with him. Tom, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Jason. Cheers. All right, best of luck. There you go. There's Tom Marshall. Oh, our friend from down south, talking about Mexican soccer. Transitioning here as I get Scott Rowson back on the line after a technical problem. Scott, we've got 10 minutes left. Can open up the phone lines 347-756-6276. We can talk about Atlanta. I know this is sort of. It's getting to the point where maybe we're paralysis by analysis. We're overanalyzing the situation. We just need to let some things happen in Atlanta, get some more information as to the level of enthusiasm, the amount of people who are going to be willing to come out to that stadium to watch this team before we can make any further judgments. You with me, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think it's all going to come down to the ownership group and the engagement that they have with local fans. So it'll be fun to watch. There we go. And I believe this is being live streamed tonight. MLSsoccer.com/live is the stream. If you're watching, I've watched all of these. In fact, I go all the way. I'm so old, and this isn't really that, but I'm old enough that I watched the city council proceedings in Portland when they were going over whether or not to revamp that stadium. That's not that long ago, but it just feels like it was. And we've added so many teams. You're sitting there with Robert's Rules Order, and you were just ready to go. I watched the Orlando City Council proceedings as well. What is wrong with me? Why did I do that? Why am I sitting through point of order? Why am I doing that? I have no idea. It's all about the growth of soccer in America. On the expansion front, Minnesota also in play. Minnesota, for me, based on sort of taking the temperature of the situation right now, is the leading candidate for number 24. That's the city where things are happening in relation to getting an MLS expansion team in there. Now, look, they have Minnesota United FC, a team that plays in the burbs, as many lower division teams do. They're not in the city. There's two distinct groups going after an MLS team in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I think it's fascinating to see this.
you've got the Wilfs, the owners of the Minnesota Vikings, the NFL team, obviously, and you've got the Minnesota Twins, who are working in partnership with Minnesota United towards a team. I don't know enough about both of those groups to make a judgment over who's better and who's worse. Clearly, there's an element of filling dates in an NFL stadium for the Vikings, which is happening in Atlanta and may not work. Do we want to do that again in Minnesota? And then there's the actual soccer element of the Twins partnership with the United makes you feel better about that one. Do you have any particular opinions on Minnesota, Scott?
Jason, this is probably an area where I could not possibly be less qualified to render an opinion.
Yeah,
I've never been to the state or the the city. I'm sure that the powers that be, based on their track record, though, right. I think they've got the formula. So my general take is, if we want to go to Atlanta, I think they've built up enough goodwill that I think they know what they're doing. If Minneapolis seems to come along as the next option, I think they're doing. I think the track record speaks for itself. So I don't know. That's where I would leave it.
Yeah, look, this is a town that's had soccer. I mean, in Minnesota Kicks, there's been history there. That the Stars before United and a couple of different iterations of that second division team. They've been successful. They've got an ardent fan base. I don't know how big it is. I don't know what the enthusiasm for MLS would be in that town. I mean, I'll certainly defer to people who live there. I've never been there either, Scott. Maybe I've flown through Minneapolis. Maybe that's what happened. One time I've flown through. I've done
that too.
That doesn't count.
I've never counted those.
No,
right?
You do not. I've been to Cleveland or something. That doesn't. I've been to the airport. That doesn't count. No, of course not. And I think that affects how people view these potential expansion possibilities. When Minneapolis is a big city, but when you are someone who's never been there, doesn't really understand the cultural aspects or how important soccer is, and again, I think Atlanta is much more accessible this way than maybe Minneapolis is. We jump to conclusions, and I think what most people know about Minneapolis sort of comes down to sports: the Vikings, the Twins, the Timberwolves, and I'm missing the hockey team, the Wild, and Prince, and that's pretty much it, right?
And it's cold.
Yeah, and right, and it's cold, and there's lots of lakes up there in Minnesota, and they have an accent, which I'm not going to do. That would be rude. So I think that leads a lot of people to, again, these conclusions about these towns before we really understand exactly what it is. Now, that does not mean that it's the right move to go expanding there. MLS has got to be conscious of each one of these opportunities. And I certainly think I've made the argument, Scott, and you can tell me if you disagree with me here. I made the argument that Don Garber's legacy, because, yeah, he was there in 2001 when teams had to be shut down. He helped make that decision, push that decision to save the league. He's been the custodian of the league through the biggest growth it's ever seen. We are here in part because of Don Garber. That's a fact. But then there's the expansion now. There's this wide expansion. And whether or not you put this all on Don Garber, because certainly the Board of Governors and the other MLS owners have a say in it, his legacy is going to be tied to this expansion. I had it at NYCFC. I put it directly on that because that seemed to be his baby. But I think this round of expansion is going to be what people judge him by if some of these teams come up short.
I think that's fair. And I think what you'll see is, whereas we're sort of inexperienced when it comes to Minneapolis, St. Paul, everyone's been to, we've all been, I think, most of us have been to Atlanta. We've been to Miami. We have opinions about those towns and about the sports cultures in those towns. Minneapolis is just a kind of a total mystery to me. So, I know a little bit about the history there, but it's not something I've experienced firsthand. My inclination is to say, you know what, if you like this as an option, the track record says let's go for it.
Yeah, but you're a Midwesterner. You're supposed to know. I mean, I know it's a big, vast space. As an East Coast guy who spent some time living in the Midwest, and has my family is all from Denver, I have an appreciation for the distances. I mean, you live 2 hours away from Sporting Park, and that's a pretty short drive to get to anything in the Midwest, Scott. I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this. The distances between this stuff. I mean, I'm watching that Hillsborough documentary last night, and all of the families talk about how they jumped in their cars in Liverpool to rush to Sheffield to find out what happened to their loved ones. It's 75 miles from Liverpool to Sheffield. 75. That's shorter. That's 20 miles shorter than the distance between New York and Philadelphia. And I don't think people have an appreciation of the distances involved. So I apologize. I called you a Midwesterner. I suppose. Go ahead, Scott.
Legit. That's legit.
What's legit? That
Missouri's part of the Midwest.
No. I'm not saying it's wrong to call you a Midwesterner. I think what it is certainly the people on both coasts tend to lump Midwesterners into this big monolithic group, and you're all the same. You know, whether you're from Minneapolis, St. Louis, Chicago, certainly Kansas in the mix. I mean, I guess we can go all the way down to, I don't know, is Oklahoma the Midwest?
I don't think so. I think that starts to get to the Southwest.
The Southwest.
You know, I think the line is actually at I-70 in Missouri, because if you go north, in northern Missouri is more, Nebraska, probably Minnesota, kind of Scandinavian background, and you go south of I-70, south of Columbia here, and you're in the South basically. So you're in Mississippi, and it's an interesting part of living here in mid-Missouri, because you live right on that line of demarcation. But we do get lumped together, and that's I'm not terribly bothered by it, I guess.
Oh no, why would you be? Look, there's a lot of good towns in the Midwest, and I think that Garber has mentioned the Midwest as part of the area that MLS needs to explore after this expansion to the Southeast. Now, what does that mean, and how quickly does it mean it? We've only got 2 minutes here, Scott, but I guess I'll leave this question to our audience, and hit us up at Soccer Morning on Twitter, or DavisJSN is my Twitter handle. Let me, because look, this is rapid expansion in a short time frame to get to 24. Now, Garber has always said we're going to have 24 teams by 2020 or whatever that date was, but he never said we're going to stop there. And I think it's possible that this is a league headed towards 32. Is that too big? Or maybe at least 28. Is that too big? How quickly do you get there? Because I think that matters too. Look, I don't know that there's any league that has ever expanded as rapidly as MLS has. Is that going to be too much? There's real concern here.
Well, and I think, do we get to grow to that level and become one of the top, leagues in the world in that same time frame? That seems, I don't know. That seems far-fetched.
We're stressing the infrastructure. Absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for Soccer Morning on a Wednesday. Congratulations, Atlanta. Have fun tonight. Thank you very much to Michael Wheeler for giving us his insight on compensation for youth clubs, and to our friend Tom Marshall as well, talking about Mexican soccer. Scott, you've done a very good job. Thank you very much for your support of the show. Thanks for sitting in today. I appreciate it, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Best of luck.
And we also have to thank Luis Villanueva for his music today. It's all been excellent. A very Brazilian vibe on today's show. All right, you have to go to iTunes, give us a rating and review. But you also need to check out soccermorning.com and find out how you can support the show. If you want to be like Scott, you want to emulate Scott Rowson, you need to contribute to the show, and you can sit in with me and be a guest host and have me cue you up and all of that excellent stuff. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Thursday? Oh, Philly and New York tonight, by the way, at Red Bull Arena. That'll be fun. See ya. Bye.
Corazón.